Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at. You know the whole rigmarole I tell you every week. Do it or else, you know, this isn't a threat, but I'll fucking break your knees. I don't know. No, but seriously, wherever we're not on there, let me know. We'll get us on there. And you know the whole jazz. Review us and shit because the algorithm says so. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and of course, our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, one is Mike Peapack. And making his return to the Game Pass Gamecast, the one, the only, Adam Marshy Marsh. So one, Mike, what's up? Adam, two, what's up?
I don't want to
rock, paper, scissors. One of you fuckers go.
I want to give the floor to our one of our original members of the pod. I want him to go ahead and fill everyone in because for me, you guys hear me say the same shit every week, but I'm genuinely curious, and I think everyone else would be happy. If you've been with us from the beginning, you probably want to listen to what Adam has to say.
Yeah.
So Adam, why don't you fill us in on what's been going on, bro?
Old fucking snake in the grass, back again, Mike. They always come back, man. They always fucking come back. No,
can't get rid of me fully.
Adam, it's always great to have you back on the show. What's good? What's going on? And what have you been playing, my friend? We'll get in the one game. Obviously, you see the title of the show. You know what the fuck we're playing. But
yeah.
outside of that, what are you playing?
It's always great to be back on the show. Thanks again for having me, guys.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what we've been playing, obviously, our main topic today is going to be on Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into more of that later. Besides that, before the release, which was just this past Friday, I've been playing a couple of different things. A little bit of Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of this little JRPG called Wolf Stride. And I just picked up Ice Pick Lodge's new game, Know by Heart. I haven't played a whole lot of it yet, but I'm looking forward to getting into that when I find some time, when I'm not busy stuck in Elden Ring.
Yeah. Ice Pick, what's the game they're known for? Because
Pathologic.
I was going to say, I thought that was the studio behind Pathologic.
Yep.
Nice. I was going to say, clearly, obviously, we're going to be talking about Elden Ring, but that obviously has been the big driving point this week for our gaming habits, but in general, it was nice to. I figured you, like me, play a lot of different things in terms of just random shit that will pop up that interests us.
Yeah.
But I figured there were at least a few more in there too. But yeah, Mike, like you say, they always come back, baby. They always fucking come back, man.
Every time.
No, I'm just kidding. But as always, great to have Adam back on the show. But guys, I don't want to necessarily hold it up too long because, like I said, it's clear what we're getting into today. And it's the big topic, the biggest topic in gaming right now. From Software's new game, Elden Ring. And yes, this is our review of Elden Ring. I would say more review in progress because none of us have rolled credits on this game yet and probably won't for quite some time. Like most reviewers who are reviewing this game will tell you, it's fucking dense. It is a big fucking meaty game, man. So just to kind of like set the table, I guess, for where all we're at with this game right now. I at least think we're just all about, I'm right under the 30-hour mark, I believe. Yeah, like right under the 30-hour mark. Mike, you're right around there as well, I know.
Yeah, I just hit 30 hours right before recording.
Okay, yeah, and then Adam, you're at 50. So you've been cheesing it hard, man. You've been grinding. I love it.
I've been putting in a little overtime.
Yeah, and this game really leans into that so much. It's so much more, and we'll obviously get into our kind of top level thoughts, but the game I think does so well at really, how do I want to put this? Respecting your time in a really great way that it kind of can fit into any nook and cranny compared to, as somebody who played Dark Souls and Sekiro and stuff like that, this tends to feel much more of a, hey, I have 10 minutes, I can go and do X, Y, and Z in this game. That compared to something else that's like, well, if it's a Dark Souls, it's much more linear and there's only certain things you could do at certain times, where this game's a little more expansive. And I think it fits to that, hey, I have a half an hour in between meetings at work. I'm going to just fucking jump on and play. And that adds up really quick. So I'm going to start with you, Adam. I want to get your top level thoughts of this game. I want to go around, just kind of get our brief, where we're at with this game, what we're thinking with this game. And just kind of like a little background with your, obviously, because you're more in line with me with your experience with Souls, that you dipped the toe in before, but never necessarily full bore every single game like a lot of people, and just kind of where we're at. So let's start with you, Adam. Give me just kind of a rundown where you're at with this game, your top level thoughts, and really where you kind of want to go from here with it.
So my coming into Elden Ring, my experience with the series has been, like you said, pretty limited. I dipped my toes into Dark Souls 1 and 2 and a little bit of Sekiro. But other than like 1 or 2 hours in each of those games, pretty much a newcomer to the series. I've also absorbed a fair bit of like secondhand Dark Souls, just, I don't know, knowledge maybe, through osmosis and just seeing memes and talking to friends who really like the games. So I know a little bit about like the design ethos of the game, and God knows every time one of these games comes out, it's the subject of discourse for at least a week or two, which is no exception this time.
Right.
Plenty of that to be had around
good, bad,
Elden
and different.
Yeah. My overall impressions of the game here at the 40-hour mark, 50-hour mark are, I'm having a blast. As a newcomer to the series, I feel completely welcomed. I feel like I've had to set some different expectations, although I was already primed for that from what others have told me about these games, to really meet the game on its own terms and allow it to subvert my expectations of most games and still have like a really enjoyable time with it. I think it does a lot of great things to make the player an active participant, where you have to pay a bit more attention, but a lot of things just feel much more rewarding because of that. And I know we're going to touch on the difficulty topic at some point, so I'll say up front that I feel like the mechanical challenge of the game has been really enjoyable for me so far.
It feels very fine-tuned to that degree. Like, this is the culmination of what From Software's learned for the past decade with these style of games.
Yeah, they've been doing more or less the same thing for... When did Demon Souls come out? And I think their design ethos goes even back further than that.
I want to say 2009.
So it's been over 10 years they've been working and refining this formula.
Demon Soul came, initial release in Japan was February 5th, 2009. So,
we're coming up on like the 13th anniversary of this series, if you want to call it that. They're not all set in the same world, but there's a clear lineage between all of these games. There's
definitely, I mean, From Software, really and even from an art perspective, you could tell from a design perspective that you're getting into this specific kind of game. Like, even when we first saw like the teaser trailer for this game at E3 a couple years ago, you could tell before they even got to talking about Miyazaki, talking about, George R.R. Martin or whatever. But even before they show a From Software logo, you could tell from character design. You could tell from they have, a person who's using a spear with big lanky arms. You could see from the type of movement that they have, the just bombastic characteristics that that bosses and enemies have. Like, you could just tell already this is a From Software game from that alone. But you're right. The DNA connected between all of them. And I think that really does make it interesting for, like us who, granted, not the biggest Souls people in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but have at least a prior experience to playing these style of games to some degree, that it does feel almost in the sense of, like you're saying, very welcoming, but very familiar across the board. That anybody who's played a Souls game before, you could jump in and just... You don't have to relearn. Like, sure, we'll add and tweak systems within it, but overall, the foundation is going to remain the same. You're going to have a similar experience.
I do want to come back to that in a little while when we start talking more in detail about the game's mechanics, about how the game treats returning players who've been on the Souls games for a long time. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. Mike, I want to kick it to you now. This is your first Souls game. So I don't want to say complete opposite end of the spectrum, but going in fresh, head first, going in. And I've always kind of said, like, and even recently, last week, I even think I said, it kind of surprises me that this is your first Souls game, knowing that the style of game that you like, very similar to a Ninja Gaiden, and a big fan of traditional RPGs, that I feel like this is very much comparative to a lot of From Software's game, much more of a traditional RPG. That you never really jumped into them before. So I'm really interested to get your kind of, like I said, top level thoughts. Give me what you're thinking about now, 30 hours in, you're definitely got, knee deep into the water now. You're used to living in this world within Elden Ring and From Software now. Where are you at with this game? And what are your overall just thoughts being a new player in this?
Yeah, I've always kind of had Dark Souls on my radar, but it's just not something that I ever really wanted to get involved in. I was probably consider myself a little bit of a snob when it comes to, I guess, ARPGs, I guess is what you would put this in. Some people put it into its own category called Soulsborne. I mean, just in general, if I hear that a game's basically like Ninja Gaiden, but it's not Ninja Gaiden, not really that interested in it, to be honest, because I'm a little bit snobby when it comes to Ninja Gaiden and just how much I really love that franchise, at least for the first two games in Black. And Ninja Gaiden Black, and Ninja Gaiden 2. But I love those games so much that I didn't really want to get into something that wasn't really going to scratch that itch. So partially just being a little ignorant to how good the games could be, especially since it's so it seems so polarizing. People either really love Dark Souls games or they seem to hate it. People aren't generally on the fence of it's okay. And with it being that polarized, I didn't really see myself taking a chance. Now with Elden Ring, I will say that this is the first game in a long time besides the initial release of Infinite. So, I mean, I guess it hasn't been technically that long, but before that, it's been a super long time that I've been enthralled by a game of this type, and just how much I just really find myself wanting, almost fiending to play the game. And there's a lot that goes into it. There's the difficulty factor that stems from not only are the enemies really difficult and cheesy at times, but like Adam said, the mechanical gameplay of it is very Ninja Gaiden-esque, because as a strictly hobbyist Ninja Gaiden Black speed runner, there are certain mechanics that you abuse in that. There are certain weapons and things of that nature that you abuse in order to beat the game as fast as humanly possible. But one of the reasons why I was so interested in speedrunning that game is because there's no real game-breaking skips that you can do. You can't just glitch yourself out of the map. It's you still have to beat the enemies. Is there ways to cheese them? Absolutely. But as you guys have seen from some of my just streaming in the Discord to you guys, I have had to cheese some enemies in Elden Ring. And if there's a person that's going to find a cheese, I've done very well for myself cheesing the shit out of some of the bosses and enemies in this game. But yeah, I mean, I just have a similar sentiment to Adam in that the meshing of mechanical difficulty combined with just sheer life and attacks from the enemy difficulty mixes for what I feel is a very pleasurable experience. Are there times where I'm really pissed off or, hitting my head off the wall? Absolutely. But there's never a time that I feel like an enemy is just impossible. So some people might disagree with me, but at the end of the day, I see the flaws, or I see the attacks that enemies do that you can exploit, and I know that that's part of the game, that you need to figure out their patterns. So as long as you kind of keep that in mind as you're going through, I don't see an enemy yet that I've run into that's completely impossible. Are they very difficult? Yeah. Are they super punishing? Absolutely. But that's all Souls games, and kind of goes back to my whole communication that we had earlier about it. That's you knew going into this game what it was going to be. So I don't want to see or hear complaining that the game's too hard. Everyone basically told you it's a 10 out of 10, but it comes with a caveat that like this is what you're getting into. Everyone told you you're getting into something that a lot of people probably spent $60 on the game and might not even get past Margit. I know the next boss after Margit, I know only like 23% of people have completed it on Steam. That's not accounting for Xbox or PlayStation players, but still, that's a small amount of the total player base.
No, definitely. And that's what, even looking at, like, I'm pulling up the Metacritic right now for Elden Ring. And it's really interesting because you're seeing and PC's a little different because right now the reviews on, and I guess I should state that as well. We're all playing on PC. That was, I think, the most accessible version right now, in terms of, at least for us to review on, I felt was probably the best way to go, because of there still needing to be day one patches with the console and yada yada. It seemed like most people were reviewing this on PC, so I felt the most comfortable going that direction. But a lot of the complaints, obviously, and we'll get into it from a optimization standpoint, obviously are lacking, to say the least, but very much so. Some of the reviews for PC obviously are from the user side are also pointing that out much more. But you are seeing a lot of, and you bring up an interesting point of, kind of the hype cycle and people getting lost in that a little bit at times, that you're seeing, the Metacritic right now, just pulling up the one on the front page, it's the PS5 version, at a 97. The user score, though, 7.7. And traditionally, it's usually Souls games are a lot higher than that. And a lot of people, I think, were, definitely got lost in the sauce a little bit on this, in the sense of, yeah, I see the 10 out of 10 from IGN. I see the 10 out of 10 from GameSpot. I see Kind of Funny's 5 out of 5. I see all these rave reviews, and a Game Informer praising it, saying that, hey, this is a generational game. And I think there is a lot of merit to that. But it is interesting to see a lot of user reviews saying, shit, this wasn't what I was expecting, coming in and getting my ass beat and getting, but kind of switching, I guess, to my view on it. And like I said, I'm about 30 hours into the game, right around where Mike's at. I've gone through, I'm not going to give specific locations, obviously, because, we may get into a little bit of spoilers where we're at later, but doubtful. Just because I think this game, and really most From Software games, benefits so much from their boss design and the nature of just stumbling upon things, especially with this game, that's mostly where the spoilers are at, because it is very much a From Software game in the Souls universe that is, you're going to, now granted, I think this is a little bit, I think it's a little more hand-fisted in terms of the narrative that's given to you compared to Dark Souls, but it is still very much hey, you're learning about this world through things you find, through environmental storytelling, through item descriptions, very much more than necessarily, hey, I am X, Y, and Z bad guy, and I'm doing this because of X, Y, and Z reason, and here are my motivations, here's who I'm working with, and here's my path. Like, you're not getting a lot of that. You have to go and find that on your own. So more so, the spoilers of this game are more enemies you'll run into and bosses and vistas and things like that. So got to kind of keep that down to a minimum to a degree. But top level for me, this game is one of the most awe-inspiring games I've played in a long time. And that's, I think I may have the highest praise. Which I never thought I would, just for context, I never thought I would right off the rip play a Souls game day one, right off, at launch, ready to go. And to a degree that I thought, this is something that I want to continuously play. Usually when I'm playing Dark Souls, it's, I get into a rhythm, and I get on a stretch of it for a week or so, and then I drop it because I get stuck somewhere, and I'm like, I can't beat my head off a wall. This, I need to walk away, yada, yada. I think what this game does so well, and why so many people obviously compare it to a Breath of the Wild, and that Breath of the Wild sonication or, personification of, it's taking this style of game, the open world genre, and kind of evolving it and taking what a lot of people are, hey, this is the next step forward for these type of games. In this more so in the the Soulsborne genre, I guess. But I think what this game does so well is it respects your time in everything you do, and everything you do within it is purposeful. So, and I say that in the fact of, traditionally in a Souls game, it's that I get stuck on, a boss, random boss, the Capra Demon or something like that in Dark Souls 1. And I just can't fucking beat it. Okay, well, realistically, that's my main objective. That's kind of all I could do right now. So I'm just going to walk away. Like, there's no point in me. Like, I'm going to take a break, go play something else, yada, yada. I think what really benefits so many people like me and so many people who approach these games like me is that now I can turn around and say, well, no, I can go do X, Y, and Z. Or, you know what? I'm just going to fuck off for a while. And, oh, cool. I see that point of interest on the map. It's not a point of interest because it's very minimalistic when it comes to, there's no outside of, you basically have the cardinal directions, and that's it on your compass, and that's all you go off of. But looking at the very, rudimentary map that they give you for the most part, there are different areas in there that's like, I wonder what's over there. I'm just going to go fucking look. And you stumble upon a dungeon. And sure, it may be a dungeon that you are not fucking ready for, or it may be a dungeon that, man, I've been playing for a while and shit, I can blow right through this. And there's a boss in here that gave me this, and now I can go do this. And then you come back and it's like, shit, maybe I should go back and try that other boss again. And now you can because you've leveled up more, or it has that feel of, like I said, respecting your time so well in the fact of like, oh, I have 10 minutes, in between, or I have a half hour to eat my lunch or something at work. You know what? I'm working from home. I'm just going to pop in and play for a little bit. Or, hey, I have all day to just sit here and fucking do whatever, and I can accomplish tons of things. The scalability of that and what you're able to do is really impressive. But
that's something I've really been loving about it, and it's, if I had to start building a guide for new players who are having trouble adjusting to the game, one of the things that I would include on that list is to basically do what you said. Like, you need to be like water with this game sometimes. If you run into a challenge that you can't beat right now, there's a ton of other stuff that you can go try to do instead. And oftentimes, getting those other rewards first is going to make you so much stronger that when you come back and face that challenge again, you're going to be like, I was never meant to beat this guy without, XYZ item that you find on the other side of the map, or, the map that you can explore at least at this point. And I haven't played enough of the other Souls games to really know whether they had that aspect to it. I want to say no for my first impressions, but can't be sure. But the fact that this is an open world game, meaning, at any given time, there are so many different directions you can go to. Everyone's experience is going to be so much different. The order that you do stuff is going to be different. And like how soon you beat different challenges is like, I don't know. I just feel like there's tons of options. And if at any point you feel like you're beating your head against a wall trying to beat this one boss, like, be like water, just flow somewhere else and try to come back when you're stronger.
Yeah, I kind of thought that's what one of the nice things about having such a difficult boss, I guess technically boss, the tree knight guy at the beginning of the game was like kind of a teaching mechanism in my opinion. And I think whenever people are playing this game, if you don't take advantage of all the lessons that you can learn from basically every enemy in every area, you're going to have a lot harder of a time progressing through the game. So like Adam says, flowing like water is a perfect way to put it. It's like the perfect analogy. And I would just say that, on top of that, just make sure whenever you're playing certain enemies, certain things, you're taking the lessons that it's trying to teach you. Because if you walk out of the tutorial area, quote unquote tutorial area, because I know some people were skipping it because they didn't know you had to jump down to the left to get the combat tutorials. Like, if you run out there and get one-shotted by an enemy, and even if you do damage to him, you see you barely do anything, maybe it's time for you to just move along and go find something else. And that's something that I've employed in my gameplay because, I went with the astronomer build, and I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later. And my experience with the game is been pretty wholly different than your guys. I can say
Mhm.
just from watching you guys play, the way you guys play the game versus the way I play the game is completely different. But the thing I'm noticing is most of the games I play nowadays, now that I'm almost 29, I don't get the same rush of replayability. But I find myself getting through the game a little bit with this first character. And now that I've learned a lot about Elden Ring, now that I've learned how to play the Dark Souls games, by and large through this experience, I feel like if I made a new character, not only would I progress much faster than I did before, because I wouldn't make the stupid mistakes I was making, but moreover, I feel like playing a melee heavy character instead of a casting heavy character would be a completely different experience. Or using two swords like a samurai build with dexterity would be completely different than what you two guys have been playing.
Yeah,
So
because
with all that being said, it's just
you did the astronomer off the rip, right?
yeah.
And
with,
then Adam and I
yeah.
both did Vagabond, right? Adam, you did Vagabond. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. You're gonna have a much different experience than we did. You know, I think it's really interesting you bring up the point about the tree sentinel because it really is like. And I don't think this is very much a spoiler by any stretch of the imagination. That enemy is literally one of the first things you handle in the game. It's not the first boss, even technically. You get the first boss within the first 5 minutes of the game. Even though you probably won't beat it. You're meant to not beat it, though people have. But I don't think this is a spoiler because he's been shown in so much B-roll and things like that leading into the game. But it's really smart the way that they design that first, and calling it the first step, really out into the world of Elden Ring and Limgrave with this Tree Sentinel, because very much so, most players are like, okay, this is clearly, there is a bad guy right there. That means realistically, I probably should go that way because that's where, you know, X, Y, and Z developer and level designer are wanting me to go through the tradition of, I've played video games forever. If there's bad guys, if there are more bad guys going one way, that's probably the way I want to go because they don't want me to go that way. That's where the most, that's where the gameplay is going to be. So I should probably go that direction. Where in this, it is very much so of, hey, you're used to just coming through and right off the rip, you're going to have a boss that teaches you kind of how to approach many of the enemies in Soulsborne games. Like in Dark Souls 1, you get into a boss battle right away. Like it is like 5 minutes after. Just like this, where you kind of, it grips you in, okay, you're going to get your ass kicked, but it's okay. You're going to die a ton, but you're going to learn each time that you go through this. But what Elden Ring does really well with that first step is really teaching you that, hey, this world is expansive. We're not just, a linear section now. This is dense and wide, and you're allowed to approach this. Yeah, you could always approach things in a cheese way or whatever when it comes to fighting enemies, but this is much more, we want you to approach the world in general in different ways. Very much so in the sense of, you're not supposed to fuck with the Tree Sentinel at all. Realistically, it could be used as a fucking tutorial for horseback combat. Realistically, you shouldn't be able to fight that boss. Like, you're not supposed to go at your level, go and fight that boss on foot. You're supposed to incorporate your horse, and you don't get the horse for, I think it's 3 points of grace or something like that. You don't get it right as soon as you, almost the, leaving, walking out onto the cliff at Breath of the Wild for the first time, like that, before you have the leaving the Imperial sewers or leaving the vault moment in Fallout, like that moment that you first get in Limgrave, you don't have that option right away. It is, you got to kind of simmer a while. You got to wait. You got to find your first point of grace. Then you got to go and kind of trek a little bit and explore the world and see what's going on and probably go in the wrong direction at first, but then kind of slowly figure it out. But it's really, really interesting to see kind of the discourse around it. And Adam kind of brought it up earlier when we were kind of doing intros and whatnot. But I think more than ever, we're seeing the discourse in a really divided way. And I don't want to say necessarily in a bad way, because I'm more in the camp of anymore, hey, play whatever, difficulty you want to play on. Do, if you want to play on literally story mode difficulty, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Whatever you do to get your enjoyment out of the game. But I think when it comes to From Software games, and I wouldn't be upset by any means if Miyazaki decided one day, hey, I want to put this in there because I want to have more people play our games and have them more accessible to people. Cool, that's great. I don't have an issue with that. That doesn't distract me in any way. You know, I don't really care. But what I think is really interesting about these games is that they really, if you would change the difficulty, quote unquote, you'd be changing every element of the game, because this game is very much designed, and the creative vision of this game is in such a specific way that you can't just necessarily put a slider on it. And I think that's really interesting to kind of talk of, and you see so many people say, oh, I wish this game was more accessible. I wish it was easier. I wish it was, I would be able to go and play it because I'm just not into those games. Or, I like the concept of this game and I think the aesthetic is really cool, but difficulty really scares me away. But I think when Miyazaki said this is probably going to be the most finished From Software Souls-esque game that they've done to date, I can see it from not in the sense of this is easy, but this game just feeds so much into each player's specific style that you will find a way to approach this game that you can make it, I don't want to say easier, but more approachable than ever. Like Mike, for example. So Mike's playing right now with his Astronomer, or at least the starting class, using a magic heavy build. Off the rip, that is very difficult, especially for somebody coming in who is never played a Souls game before. Like, that is trial by fire. You're starting like with a candy cap right off the rip.
Yeah.
So
you may think you're Chad, but you're no alpha Chad. That's for sure.
You're not that guy.
Literally.
But it's really interesting that you could have those kind of experiences, but now once you figure out, one, how the game wants you to approach it, but then also two, how you want to approach the game, you're starting to find a rhythm with not only the combat and not only the magic that you're using, but how you want to approach each combat encounter that you have, or the world in general. That, I approach it differently, or Adam approaches it differently. We're, even in the play styles that Adam and I have, we have a similar build, but we're approaching things in a much different fashion just from, us seeing. And also, too, and feel free to chime in on this, guys, I think this is one of the most, for a game that has multiplayer, but doesn't necessarily have it in the truest form that you would expect. This is one of the most communal games I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely.
Just being able to pop in our Discord and all of us share our screen and just be like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Oh shit, I haven't seen that yet. Where are you at? Oh, let me see your map. Blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, have you tried doing this? Like, oh shit, let me look at that. And like I said, feel free to chime in on this, but I really think this is more so, compared to any Souls game before, much more of just being able to sit down and have those, like, this is the sitting in the basement around the TV with your friends moment that you heard a lot of people have with, even in a modern sense, Fortnite or Madden when, say on like the PS2 or something like that, or the Xbox, much more back in the day where you would just get a bunch of buddies over, pass the controller around. This feels so much more akin to that now, almost as a platform.
I agree for sure. It's like, it takes you back to the old days of, I would liken it to like old RPGs, or even, I don't know, games like Zelda, where just there was so much more wonder and discovery involved. Now that you have like guides on the internet that'll tell you pretty much how to get through any game, and don't get me wrong, the guides are still very much a part of the Elden Ring experience, but unless you need some bit of information to like get past some point where you're just absolutely stumped, so much of the conversation around this game is just communal information sharing and swapping stories and being like, well, have you tried this, or did you find this yet? And it's like, it makes playing the game right now in this moment feel so much more important than it has for many games recently, if that makes sense. Like,
it is one of the most water cooler moment games out there that I've ever played. And like, I felt this way, and so many people are comparing it, and I think rightfully so, not in the sense of, it's necessarily transformed open worlds or this or that, to Breath of the Wild, but I haven't really had a game that gave me those style of moments where hey, did you get to do this? No, what are you talking about? Oh shit, no, if you go here and do this, this person will be there. Well, shit, in my game, that person wasn't there. Really? Yeah, they're off doing this right now. Oh, well, that's maybe because you did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, because you went here, I went here instead and interacted with that person there. So now they're not, like, the intertwinedness and just the depth of this game and the way that it's interconnected with everything and so livable, breathing that, like you said, it's so hard to not experience this between so many people and just want to share stories. Like, there's just, it's just fascinating to me that this game is having this much of an impact on people that aren't, typically getting into Souls games. Like, I think this transcends beyond a Souls game. It's very much a Souls game, but from that sense of, yeah, you're playing, it's traditional Souls combat. It is, you're going to have hard ass bosses. You're going to have some, you're going to have some elements within the game that you're feeling, oh man, I got cheated on that. But then you learn to adapt to that, and you learn to say, oh fuck, well, no, I probably should have done this instead. And you apply that, and it's trial by error. But I think it extends so much beyond that, in the sense of this game is pushing people out of their comfort zones in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, nobody hates the get good memes and the gatekeeping more than me surrounding like the conversation with these games. I think it's very tired and played out. But like, the general experience that I've had with the community is way more positive than any of that. Mm-hmm. And the game itself and the series as a whole has really been setting this up over time about like community cooperation and shared enjoyment is like baked into the game itself. Mm-hmm. You have the mechanics of writing messages to other players, which, may be true or false. You may have misleading information, or you may have really helpful hints written on the ground if you choose to use the multiplayer features.
But first, rump.
The best is when they're stacked, where it's like one's telling you there's a great item ahead, and the next one's like liar, and it's like, well,
absolutely. There's like perfect balance.
Wait a minute.
For every message that gets upvoted to maybe 50 appraisals by some trolls who will say, oh, there's a secret passage here. And of course, you're going to swing your sword against it and it's not going to do anything. There's going to be the balancing factor on the other side where people are writing down liar ahead right beneath that. And, me personally, every time I find a secret passage behind a wall that you have to hit with your sword, I always write liar ahead behind that. But, yeah, it's just like it feels like such a watershed moment for this game where a lot of people are talking about it, sharing their experiences. We're pulling in, it feels like, an audience that's been bigger than a Souls game has ever had. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, I feel like people are having positive experiences and sharing that with other people, telling your stories about what you've been doing, and sharing information has just been a real joy in this game.
Mm-hmm. I will say that, like, I think the most unique thing about Elden Ring that I've noticed, not only obviously are the classes different, so you, me, and Travis all have a different experience with the game. We can all skip certain bosses, we can all skip different dungeons, we can all miss stuff, and all experience the game a little differently. But most importantly, while we're on the topic of multiplayer, as you said, you are someone who has really taken a liking to how tastefully integrated the multiplayer has been. So if you go to a boss section and you, like the other last night when you and I were in a Discord after Travis got off, you're like, I think I'm just going to go to Godric and just drop a, I think I'm just going to go to a boss.
That's fine.
And just drop a mark and just help people beat them. Because I just want to get the runes from it and whatever, and that's what I want to do. And you have been someone who has spent a lot more time cooperating with other players, where I myself have only really used you. I've never used other players. And I think it's really interesting how you can, the multiplayer was tastefully integrated, so you could kind of choose your own experience. If you want to get help from outside sources, all the tools are there for you to do it. But if you want to get through it by yourself, they also give you the option to hire people that you talk to. And, it's just been really interesting. And one of the things that you did last night was you were playing a boss and you hired or elicited help from a person that because I triggered something at the round table too soon and didn't talk to a certain person, that person I don't think is ever available for me to elicit for help. Like I can't go to that. That person's not available. I went and talked to them. Now I can't basically get their help. So like it's just so interesting how all these intricacies and little wrinkles have been brought into a game that my experience is going to be a complete 180 from Adam's, but we both have the overwhelming feeling of joy and we've enjoyed every second of it, the both of us, even though it's so different. I think that's really cool.
I got to give major ups to all the people who carried me through some of the early boss fights, because there was my other friend Dan, who's like a longtime fan of Souls games, and he would hop on and play co-op with me and help me out with some of those early boss fights where I was still pretty weak. I hadn't gotten a lot of the items in the early area that really help you start building your character's power. And then there were also just a bunch of randos where I summoned people over the multiplayer, and they would help me beat bosses that got me over that initial difficulty hump. And then I started feeling like I could solo bosses and even help people fight their bosses, go and be summoned as a cooperator, and sort of paying it forward in that sort of way. So that's been a ton of fun.
This game is so great, I think, too, at teaching you to instill confidence in your ability. It will beat you fucking down. It will. There are times, just like other Souls games, but I think much more that there are many veteran Souls players who say this is the hardest Souls game yet that they've had, or at least one of the hardest Souls games. And maybe it's because I'm finding success with my build. I'm finding success with the movement and combat mechanics compared to previous Souls games. I think the fluidity is a good mesh between kind of opposite ends of the spectrum in Souls, as in Dark Souls 1, which feels like a very heavy game, compared to Sekiro, which is very quick and very nimble, almost like a Ninja Gaiden in a way. Where I think this game does so well at instilling the confidence of you as a player by beating you down, by teaching you, hey, you are it is okay to die. It is okay to fail. It is okay. This is going to happen. And I think Jason Schreier put out, and kind of plays into the overarching world as well, some of the some tips and tricks that he had, I guess, when approaching Elden Ring, whether you're a new player or not. But it's to not feel a hesitation of, shit, I'm going to die. Yeah, you're gonna fucking die. You're gonna get smacked, especially early on. You're learning the game, and the game demands that you say to yourself, okay, even if I die, that's fucking fine. Oh well, I'm going to beat this eventually. And
slowly, what can you learn by dying?
Right, exactly. And slowly that builds up, and it builds up, and it builds up, and it builds up until you get to a point where I think I'm close to level. I think I'm level 48 or 49 or something like that. Mike, you're what, 51, something like that?
Yeah.
What are you at, Adam?
60.
Yeah, so you get to the higher levels of this game, or at least the back 9 of the levels of this game. You're feeling confident going into every boss battle of, yeah, you know what? I'm going to just test the waters in this. I'm going to dip my toe in. If I get shit on, cool. I don't really have a lot of souls on me, or runes on me, I should say, not souls. But I don't have a lot of currency on me right now that if I die, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, well, but I'll at least understand how this boss works. And then moving forward, I'm going to take that knowledge and boom, just kick his ass real quick.
Yeah.
You have that. I think this game is so good at instilling and building a great foundational confidence in you to play this game, to approach this game each time you go in.
Yeah, I will say that, being a complete noob to Soulsborne games, I will say that now that I understand the game, it just I had a light bulb moment with pretty much a lot of different things in the game. Probably about 8 or 9 hours of gameplay ago, probably last night actually. I had the light bulb went on, and all of a sudden I figured out I had been going through these caves and finding all these items, all these smithing tools and stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, when am I ever going to need these? And then I find a different weapon and start upgrading it, and I'm like, holy shit. And then I went through from doing 100 damage a sword swing and probably 120 damage per spell cast to now my sword's doing, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 damage or so on certain enemies. And obviously everything's kind of scaling and a little different, but by and large, like, I hit a serious power spike recently. And I feel like Adam kind of felt the same. I don't know if you're feeling the same way, Travis, but the best thing about the power spikes that you feel when you're just cutting through the common enemies are there's always the bosses to kind of humble you, or like the mini bosses of an area to kind of humble you. And that's kind of akin to, Zelda having bosses and mini bosses where all of a sudden, you're starting to feel confident and then there's something to kind of humble you. And I do kind of enjoy that. But I will say that after hitting this power spike, I'm getting a whole different enjoyment out of the game than I was before. And not only is it a power spike in my weapons and everything, but just my own skill on the game. I feel a lot more competent and a lot more confident. And, it's nice playing enemies and seeing how difficult they are and seeing their patterns, because you realize not only do they have these specific attacking patterns, but that's also their weakness, because in that pattern or in those patterns, you're going to find that they like certain bosses like tire out and then they're a little weaker then, or there's moments of vulnerability for them that you can hit them and that's when you need to capitalize. So like Adam said, again, going back to the kind of being like water and just working your way through the rocks, that can apply to even boss battles in this game, where all of a sudden you think this attack's really cheesy, then you learn what the timing is on the roll to dodge or the parry or whatever. Now all of a sudden that's the boss's weakness, and it's like, holy shit. And it's like a light bulb goes off and you're like, wow, this boss was not easy, because not a lot of the bosses are easy, but it's definitely a lot different.
I'm glad you brought that up about humbling boss fights that will humble you even when you feel like you've gotten really strong. I want to close the loop, or close the ring, as it were, on something I mentioned earlier about how returning players are feeling about this game. And I think, Travis, you mentioned that like a lot of them are saying, obviously this isn't everyone's experience, but a lot of returning Soulsborne veterans are saying this is one of the hardest in the series. And one reason for that, I have learned from talking to some of these people who've been playing these games a lot, is that just on a very fine mesh level, some of the enemies' attack patterns and timings are just like a little bit off from what you would expect. Like they take 1.1 times as much time as they do in other games to swing their weapon at you. And so because they have like that muscle memory of when to dodge and when to block that they've built up, and this game is just completely subverting that, a lot of them are feeling like punished and like they have to relearn a lot of those like fine detail like timings in certain combat encounters. And I felt some of that too, just like playing through this single game. Like I felt like I was getting stronger, and then some challenge comes along that I just wasn't ready for, and I'm like, okay, I thought I was hot shit, and now I've died 10 times to the same thing. It's time to go back into learning and growing mode rather than stomping shit like I have been for the past 10 minutes. And that stomping shit phase never lasts long. I feel like this game is always pushing you out of your comfort zone and trying to get you to think on your feet and grow.
But it's a super nice release, right? Like I do kind of enjoy the pacing of where you'll be running your head into a concrete wall over and over and over again. And when you finally break down that barrier, then you're in stomping shit mode for a little bit. And it kind of gives you that release. You know?
And you definitely need that little period of feeling powerful.
Yes.
Because that's the feeling you're going to be chasing next time when the game starts throwing even harder shit at you.
It's great at
it's booting it up.
Yeah, it's great at teaching you to chase the dragon too. Like like the serotonin boost you get from finally capping off that boss who has been shitting on you for an hour, like chef's kiss. I mean, it really, really, I think, compared to, and like I said, I've played, I think it's like 50 hours of Dark Souls remastered. Never beat it, but still had a great time. I shouldn't say I've yet to beat it. Still having a great time with it. And while everything feels very rewarding in that, it doesn't feel like it's not getting that extra oomph that this game really, I feel, brings when it says, yeah, not only did you beat this boss, but now you are gonna, like you said, you're gonna feel overpowered for just a little bit. You're gonna feel like, hey, Big Dick's back in town, baby. Like you're gonna have that feeling of you run the shit for, the next half hour until you run into a mini boss or something like that really kind of says, oh, no, you're good.
There's a dirty surprise pretty close to Limgrave, and I think both of you know what I'm talking about. It has to do with a treasure chest.
Yes.
There's a boss at the end of that sequence of events that I still, even though I've basically progressed out of that area for the most part, have not beaten, and I am still waiting on my moment to go back and kick his ass because he's been taunting me since the beginning of my playthrough, and it's gonna feel really good when I finally do that.
Right.
And then what I forget what esport it was. I think it was Valorant actually, where they're not allowed to use the actual term, so they call it up downs. So you'll give it some good up downs after you beat it, just like it's like as is tradition.
Some TBs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, just kind of, I guess, kind of as we start to round out the show a little bit more, I kind of want to talk about the exploration end of this. And I think it's really unique that we get a game like this that, and I kind of talked about it a little bit, but everyone has almost their own experience with this game, and not necessarily from a combat or perspective or anything like that, but I think the open-endedness of Souls games, at least from within their linearity of like, yeah, you're still going to go to this area, but realistically, you can kind of approach it in a couple different ways, yada, yada, was kind of blown open, and it just was completely blown apart with this game in the sense of, I think it really is the next evolution of, at least within this genre, but I think overall, because I could see more games adapting this personalization of how enemies are approached with their difficulty, and where there's not as, like, sliders I don't think are going to be as ample, but more so in the sense of, yeah, there's going to be ways to challenge you, but there's also, yeah, you'll have a story mode or something like that if you really don't want a challenge to this. But I think we're going to get more out of the box. This is the difficulty that was developed with this game. And there will be an easier mode, almost like Sifu that came out on the PS5 recently, that implemented more of an interesting take on roguelites and how they're approached and the difficulty with them. There was one mode, but there's now also a hard mode, an even harder mode, and an easy mode. So you can approach the game in however you want, which I think we're still going to see that, but I think we're going to see more of a implementation of, hey, this is how this game was designed, or this is the creative vision of this game, and it may involve there being challenging moments to it. While also, too, being as accessible as possible, hopefully. But I think we're going to see this really kind of be the next evolution of exploration. And like I was saying, these water cooler moments that you're going to have. What I guess is one experience, without obviously giving too much away as we kind of cap off the show here, what's an experience that you guys had that, let's say within, like, that really made you think like, okay, this is different from what other open world games I played, or, you know, sure, you have the, like I said, the first step out of the vault or the Imperial sewers in Oblivion, or, you know, out of the cave in Skyrim kind of moment that Bethesda's always really good at, but more so in the sense of that evolution of, yeah, you see that mountain over there, you can go to it. If that makes any sense.
I guess I'll go first here. Are we trying to avoid spoilers here? How much detail do you want me to give? To a degree. Okay.
More so, I guess, relaying the, you don't have to necessarily give too many specifics, but the how it really impacted you comparative to that made you think like, shit, this is different than what I've been playing before.
There are lots of moments in Dark Souls series games, and I think Mike already kind of touched on this for our experience with Elden Ring, where your NPC interactions can feel like very dynamic. Like, Mike and I did different things in a slightly different order, and because of that, our encounters with a certain NPC were very different. Like, I think he basically missed out on talking to this one NPC, whereas I talked to her several times, and just because of the order that we did things in, he like missed a small detail, whereas I got to see it. And that event, that pattern in Soulsborne games gives you a feeling of the possibility space of what these games are likely to do. And so I was thinking about that when I had a moment on the southern continent just below Limgrave. I think it's called the Weeping Peninsula. There's a short little storyline there where you talk to two different characters who are sort of related. You go through a dungeon, and when you're done, something happens at the end, and after that, when the story felt like it was basically wrapped up, that little mini story, I was like, if I had done something slightly differently, this outcome may have been very different. And
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I really don't know to this day, and I'm probably not going to look it up ever. I might try something different next time I play, but I don't want to spoil it for myself. I want to try it and see if the game responds to that. And if it doesn't, I won't be disappointed, but since you know what I'm talking about, like, it's just a great feeling when a game responds to, or feels at least like it could respond to your actions in that sort of way.
No, definitely. Mike.
And it's a tragic moment.
Yeah. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say I think one of the things that is kind of, just to kind of piggyback off of what Adam said a little bit, without giving too much away, the replayability on the game is just at such an interesting point. And, this is me after 30 hours of gameplay saying that I see a replay in my future. I don't know how soon that replay will be per se, but like Adam said, there are things that I missed. I know I missed in this first playthrough, even though I felt like I was being a little over. I go through these periods of like over thoroughness, and then I just like once I hit the power spike where I just start blowing through people, I do that. Like that's always been the way I've played video games. I grind, get to easy street, blow through, and then hit the wall and grind again. But there are things that I know that if I did them differently, or I know that I missed, that I could go back and take care of. Therefore, I would get a not completely different experience of the game, but a vastly different experience. Add in the replayability because you can play through with a character that has all one skills like through to start. Add that in, add the possibility of speedrunning down the road, all those kinds of things being on the table. There's just so much and so many possibilities with this game, but it's so enthralling to me because the core gameplay is still centered around extreme difficulty. So it feels like it's scratching a lot of different itches for me, but it's scratching different itches for Adam or for you, but we're all still really high on it. And it's just so interesting to me that everyone that is all on different skill levels of gaming are still enjoying it to a certain extent. Now, are some of the people going to become frustrated and maybe give it up that aren't very good at video games, or especially at these types of games? I see that happening to a lot of people. But if you endure and buckle down and make yourself get through it, I think there's, juice to be, like, the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of the day. But that's me saying it. There are other people who, just might plain out not enjoy the game and they might not get through it, and I can understand that. But for me, I don't see myself putting it down anytime soon, and I see myself playing through with a different character and seeing how differently things can go if you do things in different orders going forward. Because I already know from Adam's playthrough that I missed things. And it sucks for me because the game's inherently a lot more difficult because I wasn't a little more thorough back. My eye was a little bit too much on the prize, and I didn't get, I didn't stop and smell the roses per se. And Adam's always been that type of person who stops and smells the roses with games pretty much all the time. And he gets a little bit of a different experience than I do. And sometimes it's easier for him. And, I'd like to see what the game would be like from that point of view too.
No, definitely.
When the boss can see me in front of his main room, just like wandering through the hallways, checking behind like every pot and plant, looking into his bathroom to make sure there's nothing in there before I go to fight him.
Just dodge rolling into every destructible item that is there to see, just in case there's
the boss is sitting there like tapping on his watch, like
TikTok motherfucker, come on now.
Like, let's go. Time to pay the piper. Like
dinner's on the oven right now. Like, come on now.
Stop writing butthole messages on my floor.
God, those messages are so goddamn good. They get me every time too. But yeah, like in my end, it kind of that I want to kind of, when we were talking about it, something else that I thought was really interesting to piggyback off of, really kind of wrapping up exploration with it. And I kind of kept this in mind too, kind of chiming back in on what Jason Schreier said. He posted too, one of the things he said was, this game doesn't have a quest log, obviously. There are, like most Souls games, there are technically quote unquote side quests in this game, but they're much looser in that, they're much looser than you would traditionally find in a Witcher or an Assassin's Creed, or even now modern Bethesda games, where you're going to have tons of map markers around. There's going to be a waypoint that's directing you. There's nothing necessarily like that with this game. And it reminds me a lot in a lot of instances of Morrowind, and how that game approached traversal and really just and granted, it still had a quest liner in it to keep you, your tabs for you, but there wasn't necessarily hey, go here, right here. This exact place is this person. Like, you need to, look at the map, kind of decide how you want to take things, pay attention to the topography of the map and how you're going to really kind of traverse it, and look at, road signs along the way, use your compass. And one thing that Jason brought up was, because of it not having, keep not a journal, but, notes as you go around what's going on with this. And so many people found that to be, and he was like, I didn't really think it was that, divisive of a thing to say. And granted, he was like, I still stand by them. I think it's a good idea. It plays well into the discoverability and the exploration of this game, that there shouldn't be a quest log or something like that, that it really helps you become more ingrained into this world and forces you to actually lean into the strengths of this game, which is the exploration. That it gives you that, hey, just start off by talking to this person. We're going to give you a reason to invest in that quest, but we don't want to necessarily just write it all out for you. And go ahead. Were you going to say something, Adam?
Yeah, just basically, I full-throatedly agree with that. Like, it may not be for everybody, but I love the type of game where it's worth it for me to pull out a notebook and start writing things down that interest me. I love when a game allows me to, like, pay attention and make that worthwhile. Obviously, I'm going to beat the Morrowind drum today as well. Like, that game had quest logs, but they weren't map markers, right? It didn't tell you exactly what you needed to do or where you needed to go, but it did tell you, like, who you were talking to and what they said and roughly where you needed to go. Like, they would give you directions, like, yeah, you got to go down the road and make a right, and if you've seen this, you've gone too far. And, like, this plays into what I mentioned earlier about making the player an active participant. When you just have vague instructions that you have to either write down yourself or remember, or maybe you just stumble into that NPC that you had to talk to down the line, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck. Like, the quests are there, you just have to pay attention to be able to get something out of it. And on the other side of things, I want to say, I feel like the game will not punish you if you don't want to engage with that one. Like, you could just... The story is very thin on the ground, so if you're not paying that much attention and you just want to be swing your sword fighty boy and kill everyone in the world, like, the game is not going to stop you from doing that. It's not going to wag its finger at you and say, no, you must take notes, like Jason Schreier said, or you go play. Like, I don't know. I've just been really enjoying that aspect of it.
Right, and I think it's literally put in there for the intent, at least that I see it as. This game wants you to have you're going to eventually get to, a similar end to the story or whatever, that's there, but it wants you to have your own take on this adventure. That it wants you may go X, Y, and Z different ways to get there. And along that way, you may run into things that sidetrack you because it's interesting, or it just all plays back into the just addictive loop of that this game has so subtly, that once you get it and once it clicks, it's so hard to turn off. I'm just shocked at how I don't want to say I wasn't expecting this game to not, push that subgenre of Souls forward. I kind of expected that, but in the sense of this is really one of the first times that, like, you know, this is one of those games that I really truly think is going to push how exploration and adventure-esque games are approached on a AAA level, that is. But man, I guess really kind of to wrap it up, you know, where's this game stand right? You know, you don't have to necessarily, we don't need a score or anything like that. We traditionally don't do scores. We usually give it a, you know, high recommendation or not. I guess kind of final thoughts where you wrap up with this game, where it stands right now. And I want to get a prediction too from everyone. And I'll start with Adam. Do you think this is going to be the game of the year at Game Awards 2022 this year? So Adam, what are your final thoughts on this game? You know, kind of wrapping it, putting a bow on it. And do you think Elden Ring is going to be the game of the year this year?
I'm having such a great time with Elden Ring. Every time the map gets bigger, I'm smiling wider and wider because, to be honest, I'm going to be really sad when I finally reach the end of this game. That's how much I'm enjoying it, and I think that really just says it all. I think there's a really high chance that it's going to be... It's almost guaranteed to be
a nominee.
Candidate, right? A nominee for Game of the Year. And I think just given... Like I've said, this has been such a watershed moment for games. A lot of people are talking about it right now. I am going to put my prediction out there and say, yes, I think it's going to win Game of the Year at the Game Awards. And it may very well be my Game of the Year as well.
Woo!
It's early in the year. I know it's a little early to be giving predictions, but I'm going to put that out there. Yeah. And so I could be wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah. I was going to say, because, like, I was even thinking, I was like, do I want to ask, like, oh, is this going to be your Game of the Year? Because even me thinking, I'm like, listen, there's a lot of shit left to play. And I don't, like we always say, this may be an Xbox show, but we fucking play on everything. Like, I'm fucking jazzed to get back to playing Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm jazzed to play God of War Ragnarok. I am at just full bore anticipation for Starfield this year. You know, so like there's a lot to play, but I didn't expect. Yeah, I'm right with you that like this is in the hunt. This is very much in the hunt.
The year is young, but this is a strong contender.
Like 2022 fucking came out swinging. Like first pitch fastball in there, just fucking yammed it. Mike, what about you? I want to hear where you're at. You know, kind of putting a bow on it with Elden Ring. You think it's going to be Game of the Year for 2022 at the Game Awards this year. And I want to know, are you going to be playing more Souls games too because of it?
I'll answer the last part first. Okay. I don't know that I see myself playing more Souls games.
Interesting.
It's not that I don't think that they're good. It's that I've already had Elden Ring, so it's like,
true.
How good can it really get? And this game's kind of, I do like linear progression stories because I love Ninja Gaiden, and it's not an open world. And I guess this is as close as I'm going to get to Ninja Gaiden in an open world setting. So that's one of the reasons why I love this game so much. As far as like Game of the Year conversations, and I'm not trying to be a dick because I know both of you are a lot higher on the games industry than I am. I'm kind of a jaded person because look at my fucking favorite game franchise and how far it's fallen.
Old man yells at cloud.
It's just a pig shit game and it just keeps getting brought back. Just let Halo die. Let me play MCC for the rest of my life and stop trying to bring games out. You're fucking terrible at making them. But with all that being like out of my system, unfortunately, from a pessimist point of view, the reason why I think this is Game of the Year is not only is it because it's the best game that's going to come out this year, what the fuck is going to compete with it? I know Horizon Zero Dawn has a new installment and that it's decent, but I'm kind of a pessimist in the way that like, what else is there?
Yeah.
Like nothing can compete with this game unless fucking, I mean, I guess Starfield's coming out, but like realistically speaking, Bethesda's kind of fallen off, like fell off the wagon. Like at this point, this game is so far a favorite front runner that Starfall would have to blow everyone's tits off for it to catch it, in my opinion. And that's kind of shitty, but like it is what it is.
And let's be real. I'm fucking jazzed and I'm super excited for Starfield because I'm a Bethesda stan and I'm excited for their first new IP in well over 20 years. Like I'm just fully excited to get in and play that game. But I'll be damned if I'm not saying I'm just hyped it comes out and we're all right. Elder Scrolls 6, let's go. Come on now.
Yeah, like, we just need to get this game the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, I'm excited to
And
play it.
that's
I'm going to
also
play
my
it for hundreds of
pessimistic view.
hours. There's no doubt in my mind I'm probably going to love it and play it for hundreds of hours. But you know what? Once it's out, cool. All right, cool. Elder Scrolls 6, let's start work. Let's now that is the main focus. You've said in 2018, the next coming up this fall, Fallout 76. After that, Starfield. After that, then Elder Scrolls. Okay, one box is checked, and God, was that a struggle. Hopefully this one that's coming out from Bethesda Game Studios, the next one is going to be a astounding good thumbs up check mark, but there we go. We're on to Elder Scrolls. Let's not get it twisted. Like, that's what we're all waiting for. The one
And
you've been waiting for.
I hate to be that guy. I'm always that guy on the show that you two could talk glowingly about something and I would find the negative in it. And it's not that, like, I think the game's a negative. It's
It ran a street light in 1986, that fucker.
yeah, it's just kind of sad that, like, this game by default, like, it's March, and I feel like there's just no chance for any other game.
Just wrap it up.
It's kind of shitty, but, like, at the same time, I want to make it clear that, like, is it because the games industry has fallen off and, like, not fallen off because they're releasing great games every year, but, like, the years of, like, blockbuster v blockbuster are just, like, not there, because like Halo Infinite's probably gonna, like, for some reason it's gonna sneak its way in there. I don't know if they're gonna pay them off to, like, at least get nominated. I don't know that the Game Awards, I wouldn't say that it's, like, compromised like that, like some other things are, but, like, you know, what's gonna stand up to this game? Halo Infinite? Like, no, there's no shot, right? Like, obviously, Battlefield 2042 is a piece of shit. Like, there's so many piece of shit games out there. It's just nice to have a game that, like, honestly,
at a AAA level. Like, I get what you're saying.
I myself,
this is a very unique
10s
game.
out of 10s.
Yeah,
I saw it getting 10s out of 10s, and I'm like, there's just no fucking way that it's a perfect experience. And then I get it, and after 30 hours, I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah,
holy fuck. Like, for once, a game has been so hyped, almost certainly overhyped. Most people would think coming into it, you would have to think, like, this game's overhyped, and then you get it and you're like, holy fuck, it was underhyped. How can you underhype this game?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about it. I feel like it was underhyped.
Yeah. And
but I had to get digs on 343 and Bethesda before we
well, yeah, exactly. You got to poke the bear a little bit. But no, and I'm this is it's going to be very hard to compete with this game, period. I mean, just get into my, like, this game's just absolutely astounding. It is absolutely incredible. This blew my expectations out of the water. This is a game that hooked me right from the moment that I jumped in and really saw what direction this was going. And I think Miyazaki was very, very, very right in saying this is probably going to be the most finished game that they've put, that From Software has developed, and I think is the most accessible, not necessarily from a difficulty standpoint or true accessibility options, because I think every single developer, every single publisher who is working with these developers to put these games out can be better in the light of accessibility, and not only from a difficulty standpoint, but actual accessibility needs within gaming. I'm always going to beat that drum. So, and this game is no different on that. But from what this game is a true, I think, step forward for not only Souls games, obviously, but really how AAA open worlds are going to be viewed at. And this is I personally think, because we're coming up on year 5 of Breath of the Wild being out, I from a very broad standpoint, I think it's totally fair to compare these games. Dark Souls and Soulsborne games are, in their DNA alone, are very much thanks to Nintendo and Zelda specifically, as Miyazaki has said multiple times. So, it's hard to not compare these two to a degree. But in the sense of, I think they are still two very different games. And I think at the same degree, a large scale, detailed open world, when you think, AAA video game, open worlds, I think this is really going to push that forward. This is the next step into immersiveness and from an exploration standpoint of we're getting to a point now with environmental storytelling that saying more with less is becoming so much easier that it's going to get to a point where it's going to feel so natural exploring things that you just won't even notice. Hey, there's not as much like story or dialogue or something like that that's being force fed to me. I'm just learning about this and I'm naturally picking up on this because of how detailed and how dense this world is that I'm living in. So I am hands down, I'm blown away by this game. I didn't think that this is definitely going to be already in my contenders for game of the year. Already. It's just like fucking It Takes Two already came in last year right around this time and fucking blew my socks off. And I was like, shit, I already have a game of the year contender in March. And you know, I just can't believe that this game, I am connecting so much with this game and what it's able to do. And I too think this is hands down, it's going to be a nominee for game of the year in 2022 on the Game Awards. But there's still a lot of time to go. There's still a lot of fucking games to come out. But I would be hard pressed for this not to. This feels like an Ocarina of Time moment, I think, in games.
It's kind of crazy to think that on last Thursday, I wasn't even thinking about getting Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Like the night before it launched, I was like, yeah, I'll probably give it a miss. Like, I'm not really into Souls games. But something pulled me in, and now here we are.
50 hours later. It was P-Pack pre-ordering the game.
Right. I was like, oh, if he's going to get it, then I guess I have to dive in too. And I'm glad you did.
Yeah, man.
Peer pressured you into that.
I thought my game of the year might be like, I don't know. I really like tactical RPGs, so I thought maybe Triangle Strategy would have a crack at it, which I think is coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
kind of forgot about it.
Oh yeah,
I enjoyed the demo. I was a little bit less hype after playing the second demo, but still gonna get it. I like Pathologic and I like Ice Pick Lodge, so maybe their new game will be a contender for me. I have yet to find out, but. I feel like it's anybody's game, but Elden Ring, definitely for me, and it sounds like for you guys too, might be one of your favorite games this year.
Yeah.
You can definitely lock it up and put a bow on it for me, because like I said, this feels like Ninja Gaiden, but open world. And God, I hope this, if Travis is right, if this is truly an Ocarina of Time moment, I pray to God, whatever God is your God, it could be Allah, it could be Buddha. I don't care.
Flying spaghetti monster.
But I pray to whatever God that this sparks somehow Team Ninja comes back from the dead and they say imagine if we just threw Ria Hayabusa just running around in an open world. Yes,
an open world like feudal Japan.
Yes, please, Japan Ria Hayabusa versus samurais, bro. It's already fucking written for you.
Yeah.
I mean,
just hire George R.R. Martin on, and it's a done deal.
Forget
They've been
Neo.
making the Nioh games, or Neo, yeah, which already puts them close to making another imitator of Elden Ring.
Just do it. Just bring Ria Hayabusa back. I mean, I guess one of the alluring things about Elden Ring is the freedom to create. Maybe you can come to a some weird timeline where Ryu Hayabusa's ninja school is, and you can pick classes from.
Or they could just,
make it Ryu.
Tecmo can just literally ship off the IP to From Software and just let them fucking,
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to do anything with it, please stop holding on to it.
Give me.
If 343 could send From Software,
oh Jesus Christ,
Halo,
Jesus,
just get Halo away from them.
All right, we're done. Jesus Christ, I'll let it go on long enough. All right. Anyways, though, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. Adam, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, talk about everything we talked about today with Elden Ring, what we liked about it. There wasn't much that we disliked about it, I'll be honest. But where can people find you online to talk about all of it?
If you want to share your cheese strats with me for Elden Ring, you can catch me on twitter.com at @AC_Marshy. That's at @AC_MARSHY.
Nice. And as always, my co-pilot, Mike P-Pack. Mike, where can people find you on the internet to talk about Elden Ring and all we've talked about in our review of it today?
I'm going to mix up the the routine here
Oh,
because
boy.
I gotta use a throwback because Adam didn't use it. You can find me where the Bluebird sings.
Yeah.
At TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
You've been in love with that saying since he pulled that out.
Dude, it was mad. It was like it was money to my ears, and since he didn't use it, I could.
He fucking
Feel free
trademarked
to
it.
keep using it, and thanks again for having me back on the
Yeah,
show, guys. It's been a
Oh, it was a
while.
pleasure.
As always.
Please come back.
Yeah. Like Mike, like we always, they always come back. They always
always
come.
come back.
They always come back. Man. Somehow, our shitstorm, they always fucking find their way back. Daddy's home.
It's like a fungus. It just grows inside of them until they finally
They're
get
like,
it.
Jesus, all right, we'll fucking, I'll talk to these
If
fucks
it's a
again.
shitstorm, then the eye is the safest place to be.
Right,
in the very
exactly.
center.
Yeah, anarchy.
It comes around full circle.
Yeah. And anyway, as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. You could find me there at TRAVLESS_. You could also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me, or you want to come play join our Elden Ring co-op runs that we do on some boss battles, you can do so. It's just regular old Travelus on Xbox Live as well, too, at TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and, of course, PC gaming, including rumors, news, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, and review us wherever you get a podcast at. And if I'm not on somewhere, just holler at your boy. We'll figure it out. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. And with that being said, Mike and Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show as always. And that's going to do it for episode this week. So thank you so much for sharing, listening, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.